Welcome to this webinar series. Kristen and I and the whole team is really excited to bring in a number of really key integral people in the rare disease community who do fantastic work. And we are going to kick off the series today with NORD, and I'm super excited to have NORD. This particular organization is very near and dear to my heart. They have been fantastic in our rare disease journey and working with our organization. So I'm so excited that they could kick off the series. And with that, a couple housekeeping notes. Please remain on mute during the webinar. Also, we will take questions at the end. There will be time at the end, so please submit your questions via chat and I will keep up with those. This presentation is being recorded, and also this presentation will be shared. I am excited to introduce my friend, Debbie Drell, and she is the Director of Membership and Services for the National Organization of Rare Disorders. In this role, she oversees NORD's membership programs, which support the collective and individual needs of rare disease patient organizations, patients, and advocates through education, research, advocacy, and mentorship. She has over 22 years of leadership in nonprofit public health, education awareness, and bringing advocacy to the organization. Prior to joining NORD, Debbie spent 13 years with the Pulmonary Hypertension Association, which at the time was a NORD, or is a NORD member organization. During that time, Debbie led the growth of the organization's network of support groups from 80 to nearly 300, developing new services personalized to the diversity of patients and caregivers. And she also convened the largest gathering of the pulmonary hypertension patients organization in history. Her dedication to the rare disease community is deeply rooted with a personal connection. She was inspired herself to enter the rare disease community when her older sister, Alex, was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension. And with that, I welcome Debbie.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I really appreciate that introduction. It's been a while since I've had an introduction that really speaks to all of the work that I've done. Aliza and Ed, whom I will transition after I'm done talking about some of our membership programs. I'm not going to give you all that kind of introduction, but we definitely have a great team at NORD, and I'm so grateful. And I guess ultimately from my background, what I want you to know is that I have worked not only at NORD, but with other rare disease organizations, one that's related to my personal story with my sister. I know how hard it is and what the struggle is in terms of funding, getting people on board to support the research, finding patients. And I know that the work you do is a matter of life and death for so many. It's a matter of better outcomes, better lives. And for some of the people that I know in pulmonary hypertension, it's in memory of those who we've lost. I bring that to NORD, but Aliza and Ed and everyone that works at NORD, we work like lives are on the line, because they are. And we bring our heart and soul to the work. And I know you do. And so I'm really grateful to be able to share with you, how does NORD support researchers, especially patient advocacy groups, because that's where you're coming from, involved in research. So next slide, please. So this is the current panel of speakers for today, and we will be very excited to do Q&A. This is really catching up with NORD. Next slide, please. So the agenda for our talks will involve how to get patient participants fully on board with research, helping them to understand the opportunities, actual financial assistance programs that we offer to get literally physically patients to their clinical trial sites and accessing their involvement in research. And then a little bit about Rare Disease Day, because Rare Disease Day is coming up. It's in less than 2 weeks. And so we thought we'd share that. And then Aliza and Ed will speak towards our research and clinical activities, which you see there, and we'll go into greater detail. Next slide, please. So the first thing I want to share is this new program that NORD has launched last month, which is part of a larger resource called Rare Launch. NORD developed Rare Launch to launch, literally get people who are not involved in nonprofits, but who want to start a nonprofit for their rare disease. So if there's no nonprofit, we want to help launch people into the community and into the space. If you want to have patient-centered research, we believe that there needs to be a patient home in the form of a 501c3 that can actually help with coordination, strategy, and engagement in research with a medical advisory board. So NORD, at the heart of our mission, is to support anyone who wants to start a nonprofit where there are none and get them involved. But another element of the launching is if you're a nonprofit and you've done the application, you got your 501c3 and you're just starting out, launching the organization newly formed into research. And what does that mean? And so we created a series of resources and workshops, as well as piloting and working with individual organizations to engage them in our registry platform, engage them in the research process to learn about what it takes and what are the stumbling pain points and how to counter that. So we've created all these resources. And then we thought, let's take it to the next level. Let's imagine having an online university where you go and at your pace, you take courses, guided at your pace, self-directed. You can register. It's a learning management system. You can register and you can walk along each webinar, taking you to a deeper and more complex level of research. And so you all are involved and engaged in research, but this platform, which you can visit learn.rarediseases.org, this is for your board of directors. This is for your advocates in the field. This is for your interns, for your new staff. Use our learning management system to onboard your staff, to get them on board, to understand what it takes and why you're doing this. It's a challenge sometimes to have everybody on the same page in terms of why patients are involved in research, why they're engaged, why it's important, the priorities. I know from my experience at the Pulmonary Hypertension Association, we had a board member who didn't care that we had a registry. He had a son with the disease, but his focus was something completely different. He's like, why are we spending so much time on research? And there were drugs for PH, but he just didn't understand. And so if you want to use our resources, it's free. And I can pop the link in the chat in a second, but it's a really great resource. Next slide, please. I just want to tell you what to expect in the research ready side of Rare Launch. So what's the impact of research when your organization drives it? Is your organization research ready? What are best practices, research standards? How to go from diagnosis to driving research for individual patients. Anybody in your community can take this. It's free, it's available, and you can sign up to get updates from our office on new resources. We have a module in this learning management system that's about recruiting and diversity, getting more representation in your research. We want to create more resources. If there's anything that you think NORD could develop that's missing, let us know. You can email us at membership@rarediseases.org. I'll also put that in the chat. Next slide, please. So NORD also has support programs, patient assistance programs. We are well recognized and regarded in the community on a vast array policy, our membership, but our patient assistance program in 2021 supported almost 10,000 patients with 265 rare diagnoses. Our team has taken almost 70,000 calls in 1 year for patient assistance. And you can see the diversity of the assistance programs. What does this have to do with research? Our clinical trial travel and lodging support is an opportunity for you. If you want to work with NORD, we can support, looking for funding and working together collaboratively. But we basically have a shop set up that helps with a system in place, with a team that does this specifically. So there's a lot of resources to help your organization if you want to set up a patient assistance program or learn more about how to do that. We do have a dedicated and large, robust patient services and information services team. Next slide, please. So that said, we know there's barriers to participation in trials. Everything that you see on this slide, you've experienced, you know this. The stays are long because they're multi-specialty care. Children, you have to go, if you're taking a child and you have other children, it's the whole family going, it compounds travel costs. There's people who live all over the country, and the specialty care is in a site in New York. And you have people all over the country and they can't travel to New York so easily or frequently. And this really affects low-income communities as well. People who don't have the ability to travel or pay for travel. So the logistics involved in that, the emotional burden, there's so much involved in patient participation in trials. Next slide. That said, NORD wants to support through our patient assistance program on clinical trial transportation and travel coordination. We have programs set up in place. We supported 11 trials, 145 patients to 26 states and 2 countries, and 138 flights. So there's opportunities for NORD to support your communities, and NORD takes the time to coordinate one-to-one relationships with each family, developing strong understanding of their unique needs and their family structures. We have thorough knowledge on protocol requirements, allowing for active planning and support. So we're prepared. We work closely with the families. We customize travel plans. And this was something that I think is a source of pride for us, that we can be able to provide this kind of resource. And if that's something that is a challenge for your community, reach out to us. You can email me at membership@rarediseases.org, and I can connect you with our team to talk about what options are available. Next slide, please. So the last thing I want to mention is Rare Disease Day. It is the most magical, wonderful time of the year. Hundreds of events around the world take place on this day or around this day or week, the last day of February. It is a holiday. You know, this is the time to take action and get involved. I love the pictures here because you can see the Colosseum, you can see the Brandenburg Gate, you can see the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So the sky's the limit. And especially during the pandemic, you know, people haven't been able to leave their homes. These are beacons of hope. And those are the colors for Rare Disease Day. NORD is actually organizing an activity on February 28th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. So that's on that Monday, which is Rare Disease Day, which is the last day of February. And your organization can get involved in a number of ways. You can find an event, you can host an event, you can ask your community to share their stories. We have a social media toolkit. You can use the images that are there to post something on social media. It's so easy to do a social media campaign around Rare Disease Day. And just know that it's not just to invigorate your community. You can take your message and share it with the hashtag, but you're also you're sort of riding on the hashtag trends. So if we're all participating in this, we're magnifying that hashtag and you're getting your message in front of a new audience. So really the rising tide lifts all boats in this case. So we want you to participate, show your stripes, light up for Rare if you work in an office building, if there is a monument, it could be a church, a government building, really anything can be lit up in your community for Rare Disease Day. This is also an opportunity to get media. So if you visit rarediseaseday.us, you can see some resources to help you share your story. Some groups get proclamations in their county or in their state for Rare Disease Day. And then also know that the global theme for Rare Disease Day for 2022 is health equity. And that means everyone has a fair and just opportunity to be healthy. And for rare disease and health equity, you can use that and ask people, what does this mean to you? How have you had to fight for your healthcare, fight for your diagnosis? And we know that it takes multiple doctors, more than 7 misdiagnoses for people to get accurately diagnosed with rare disease. So it's a theme that is really important and one that will echo through this day. So encourage everyone to get involved in that. And you know, originally we were invited to speak to share with you about NORD's member benefits. NORD, if you join NORD as a member organization, We give you access to other leaders. We have grants and scholarships valued at around $1,000 to travel to Washington, D.C. for our summit, which happens in October, and it's drug development and research. So it's everything that you're doing here. We have comp registrations to other events. We have access to Board Source, which will help you govern your board for capacity building and governance. So there's a lot of resources for membership. So I haven't mentioned that in any of the slides, but I do want to take a pause and say that if you're not a member of NORD, we would love to welcome you, have that conversation, tell you more about what that means, why you should join. But really, I wanted to tell you about some of the other resources that we have, because we can talk about membership one-to-one and hear your ideas for how NORD can support you. So that is all I'm going to say. I will be putting some links in the chat, but I'm very excited to pass the figurative microphone to my colleague, Eliza Fink, our Director of Research.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us. I'm really excited. Here, we can advance the slide now. To really talk a little bit more specifically about some of our research activities in this space. So next slide. So putting these, thinking about this wider rare disease landscape, and I acknowledge that these are all things that we are all very familiar with, but I find it sort of helpful to lay this out to kind of help explain some of the rationale for the programs that we have developed and how they really tie in to try and address these key issues regarding the vast number of rare diseases that they have, that so few have treatment, that we really are still learning about so many of diseases, about what they look like, what are their outcomes, and that we don't yet really have that research, we're still building that research community to really be able to address all of these needs. So thinking about that, as we move to the next slide, I wanted to share with you about the Jane Holzer Seed Grant Program. And this is actually probably the first really research activity that NORD engaged in, and has really been in effect for, started back in the late 1980s. And this has really been a program to provide some seed grants to researchers. Over the years, this has worked in multiple ways. Sometimes it's been through individual donors. Sometimes we've administered this on behalf of a patient advocacy group. And really the goal of these grants are really to get people started, to let people sort of see, collect some preliminary data that then can move to propel them to further research. Really with this idea of building clinician scientists with a passion for rare disease who can see a career for themselves in this space. And so over these years, we've given out over $9 million in funding, over 200 awards, and really had a global impact. We've been able to award both in the US and much more broadly. And again, all of this to really think about how do we help build this community of scientists who are engaged in this work. Next slide. And so then another program that I wanted to touch briefly on is the I Am Rare Registry platform. And this is a program that was launched back in 2014, really to address this issue about the lack of longitudinal and natural history data for so many of these diseases. And so this platform was really built as a way for patient advocacy groups to try and build this knowledge about their community. And so over since 2014, there's about 30 registries that have been launched on the platform, over more than 12,000 individuals who have contributed data, and we see over 115,000 different survey submissions. So slowly we're really building this pool of knowledge about both individual diseases, but then wider about the rare disease community in a much wider sense. Okay, next slide, please. And so now I want to spend a few minutes talking about one specific program that we have been engaged in. This is the Rare Disease Cures Accelerator Data and Analytics Platform program. And what this is really this neutral, really this plan to really think about we know that there is work happening, but sometimes it's happening in silos and sometimes it's happening in different places. And how do we think about really pulling all this together and really being able to work as a community. And so this program thinks about it in a couple manners. One is really thinking about how do we create and promote the sharing of data. And then in parallel, how do we also think about collecting data in a way that we're all doing it in similar ways, in standard ways, so that the data can actually talk to each other and we mean the same things when we collect this data. But then in addition, once we have it, how do we open it up to a wide range of researchers so that everybody can really put their brain power into this, and really we can really, the impact of this data can be as strong as possible, with the goal that we collectively build this knowledge and understanding of these rare diseases. So next slide. And so just a little bit of sort of the players in this program. This is a project that is sponsored by the Food and Drug Administration, you know, as part of 21st Century Cures and the Rare Disease Cures Accelerator program. This is one of the pieces to really develop this data and analytics platform to really, really motivate us to getting to that point of accelerating cures in rare diseases. And so the Critical Path Institute, or CPAG, is the primary grantee on this grant. And they really have broad experience around building consensus, developing of data standards, you know, aggregating data and developing the advanced analytics. And NORD is a partner in this project also, really bringing our perspective of patient advocacy groups into the conversation and making sure that the needs and the voice of both patient advocacy groups and patients is being heard and being integrated into this entire program. Next slide. So yeah, and again, the goal here is really to address the entire ecosystem. So the goal here is that what this program can really serve patients, providers, clinicians, researchers, pharmaceutical companies, regulatory reviewers, and scientists. And how are we hoping to do this? By really creating these pools of relevant data, and specifically in rare diseases, that exist in a way that can be used, with the ultimate goal here is that we want to facilitate rare disease development. And then how are we defining our success? It's really by having these high quality data submissions that researchers can take and do impactful research using them, with, of course, our ultimate goal here is to be able to find cures for these rare diseases. Next slide. So then how does this actually help in practice? Sort of thinking through some of the details, right? You know, by sharing data and standardizing it, what does it get to us? So again, if we think about, you know, centralizing and standardizing data, so one of the key things that we've seen is, you know, by pooling this data together, the level of noise often rises to the point that we start seeing industry being aware and interested in the disease, and being curious and wondering if this is a space that they may want to engage, if they may have a product that may be able to help. It allows us to really continue our understanding of both what the disease is, but also the heterogeneity, and also the key outcomes that are going to be important, so that the more we understand these diseases, the more we can think about targets for treatment, the more we can understand the impact of these diseases on individuals and patients' lives. And again, you know, it allows us to improve the biomarkers that we have, allows us to think about and to explore different clinical outcome assessments, all with the goal of, like, so that if there is a potential treatment, that we have ways to study it, we have ways to test it, we have ways to assess its efficacy. And then, you know, another thing that's I think is really key here is it allows us to decrease the burden on patients, because we're no longer asking them the same questions multiple times. And so the impact of the data that they submit just gets magnified, because it can be used in so many different ways while still minimizing the burden on them. And then, you know, all of this is really to that, you know, in some ways that goal of being able to use this data for regulatory submissions. Next slide. But, you know, we recognize that, you know, there are data sharing is a very big topic and people are talking, and just kind of wanted to point out some key differentials of the RDCA DAP. And one of them that we wanted to note is that this project is sponsored by FDA, and they are really integrated and involved in the thinking about the platform and the requirements and the standards. Secondly, this is being built as a resource for the entire community. This is seen as our resource. There's no intention that it would ever only be available for certain people. This is open to everybody. This is all of ours. And then wanted to acknowledge that the way the platform works, it only accepts de-identified data. And so keeping in mind very clearly that there is a responsibility as data stewards to keep the information safe and secure. Just to give you a little bit of where we are. So the platform was officially launched back in September 2021. And there are currently about 20 data sets available on the platform, over 100 approved users, and 6 approved data requests that have gone through the approval process. Below just gives you an overview of some of the different diseases that are currently represented in the platform. Okay, and then next slide. And so just some sort of just to sort of close this off with some sort of very tangible steps that we think about. And as you'll see on the slide, you can learn more about the program by going to the CPAG website under RDCA DAP, or you can email them directly at rdcadap@cpag.org. But really thinking about while data sharing is sort of an end goal of this, there are multiple steps that people can engage in at all steps of the research project, from both supporting and participating in natural history studies and clinical trials, really thinking a priori as studies are developed. How do we create consents? How do we talk about studies such that at the end of the study, there's opportunities for data sharing? And then thinking about the data that you do have control of and that you are participating, and encouraging data sharing so that really that your data has the potential to really be impactful across a wide range of research questions and individuals, and really, again, with this ultimate goal of accelerating cures for rare diseases. So I think that is the end. And with that, I will turn it over to Ed Nealon, who is our Chief Medical and Scientific Officer.
Great, thank you, Eliza. I hope you can hear me okay. That was a great presentation, Eliza. As Eliza said, I'm Ed Nealon. I'm NORD's Chief Medical and Scientific Officer. I'm going to talk about one of the newest programs at NORD, again, created for the benefit of the rare disease community as a whole, and that is the NORD Rare Disease Centers of Excellence program. About 3 months ago, at the beginning of November, after the review of an extensive set of applications, NORD announced its designation of 31 medical centers across the United States that have outstanding programs for patients with rare diseases as NORD Rare Disease Centers of Excellence. I included on this slide, although it's really tiny down there at the bottom, a link to that press release. Next slide, please. The NORD Rare Disease Centers of Excellence to do. The first thing is to help patients who are struggling to find answers, identify centers with deep expertise so that they can get help with diagnosis, clinical care, or potentially get connected to researchers and clinical research studies if that's what they need. In addition, we strive to enable the sites in the network to collaborate together to address problems that one site couldn't address alone, including clinical, scientific, and public policy problems. And I'll say more about that a little bit later. One thing that we are explicitly not doing is competing with any existing Center of Excellence programs that may exist for, let's say, one specific disease. Next slide, please. I don't really need to tell this audience, but the rare diseases face challenges that more common diseases just don't. Like, for example, there being only a few medical experts in any one rare disease, and the long diagnostic odyssey with the average time to diagnosis having been estimated to be 5 to 7 years in multiple different studies, as well as oftentimes extensive lifelong medical needs with some studies showing that rare disease patients may see 5 times as many specialists and incur higher costs. In addition, for rare diseases, less than 10% have an FDA-approved treatment or therapy. And there's also a lack of educational materials, especially in other languages, leading to some real problems with awareness and education in the rare disease space. With these things in mind, next slide, please. The centers that were designated by NORD were all judged by way of an extensive application that had around 130 questions, some of them long essay questions, to have demonstrated these shared qualities that we felt were important for a generalized rare disease center of excellence. Number one, a demonstrated commitment to rare disease patients and their families. Number two, coordinated multi-specialty care with specialists available in essentially every medical discipline. A support system for transitioning pediatric patients to adult care, and ability to see both pediatric and adult patients, which meant that if a standalone children's hospital applied, they needed to do so together with an adult hospital partner. We also wanted every center to show evidence that they were involved in training the next generation of rare disease specialists, and that they were actively contributing to rare disease research and/or new models of clinical care. Next slide, please. This slide lists the 31 centers that we designated after reviewing the applications. This list is in alphabetical order by state. So if you're curious about what's been designated in a particular state, you can go down the list alphabetically by state. I'm not a big fan of arbitrary rankings, such as US News and World Report, but it seems to be the one that the most people look at. So a sort of external validation of the obviously very high quality of these medical centers. I'll just note that this includes 10 of the top 14 US News and World Report medical schools, 8 of the top 10 US News and World Report children's hospitals. It also includes 8 of the 12 NIH-funded clinical centers in the Undiagnosed Disease Network. And particularly relevant to this conversation, it includes many centers that are involved in RDCRN research consortia, including the Data Management and Coordinating Center for the RDCRN at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Next slide, please. This slide I created with some animations. Look like it's loaded all at once, but that's fine. To sort of summarize how we envision this working. So the statement on the right is kind of the mission. By linking these sites together with a shared collaboration platform so that you can share files with another faculty member at another part of the network, just like you're in the same institution, as well as frequent virtual meetings, NORD's network will come to be a new community of rare disease clinicians and scientists that will be a rich environment for sharing clinical expertise, sharing best practices, including treatment protocols, speeding the pace of diagnosis, and accelerating research and other efforts to improve outcomes for patients. So what the animation on the left was meant to show is that, let's say a research study is launched by a professor at site A, we want to lower the barriers that currently exist and help those studies be spread to other sites if that's desired and applicable. This is not the same as the RDCRN. We don't come with millions of dollars of NIH funding. So we're talking about, and we're not just working on specific diseases. We are trying to create an infrastructure that will help the average professor spread their, research study across the site if that's desired. Similarly, as we're very interested in improving clinical care, when any one of the sites develops something new and useful to the other sites, let's say a new piece of patient educational material or a new treatment guideline, we want to very quickly spread those materials across the network. In the month of December, I held individual calls with each of the 31 center directors, and there were several things that they all agreed upon. And one of them was that they shouldn't be constantly reinventing the wheel. If someone else in the network has a good system for something or a good written document or material to help with something, we should be sharing those things. Next slide, please. It was also agreed by nearly all of the center directors that there were certain topics that we should work on collaboratively. And at the present moment, the center directors are polling their faculty, which is, I think, going to number in the hundreds across the country, for those individuals who are passionate about trying to solve a problem, willing to volunteer their time, and will serve on one of the working groups listed here. On the left-hand side of the slide is a key unmet need in the rare disease population, such as the long diagnostic odyssey, or the lack of treatments, or the lack of treatment guidelines, or gaps in patient education materials. And on the right is the title of the working group currently being convened to try to address those issues. And I think this is my last slide, so I'll turn it back to the mainstream of the conversation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nealon. That was a fantastic presentation, and thank you to the whole NORD team. A lot of information here. I just wanted to remind everyone, because we lost some folks, and I see some of you logging back in right now. This will be available, so if you miss some portion of the presentation, we'll make sure that you have a copy. I don't see any questions as of yet. Debbie put quite a bit of information in the chat, so be sure to scroll through. Debbie, I don't know if you saw this yet, but I wanted to see if there was a link for patient leaders who may want to be a member organization if they're not already with NORD. You may have shared that earlier. I'm not sure.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. I was typing it up and just popped it in. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And Dr. Nealon, in your presentation about the Centers of Excellence first, as a representative for a patient organization, I wanted to say thank you to you and your team and to NORD for really realizing the need to coordinate care there. That's quite a large number of centers that you guys have been able to review and list, and the listing is also in the chat. I'm fascinated by the network that you all are planning, and some of our clinical folks who might still be on the call might have an interest about that. Is this a in-process network that you're building to be able to share information? Because I know that's a huge challenge for clinical centers to be able to, in some cases, share large amounts of information across centers.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kristen. We realized the need to have basically a robust IT support system for the network. So NORD is both fundraising to be able to support the network as it should be supported, and investing some of its own reserves in the initial steps of building that platform. There's going to be sort of three buckets, or three sort of levels. So I listed the working groups. We want each one of those working groups, which is going to have faculty, staff, and in some cases trainees or patient representatives from different parts of the country working together in a group. We want them to have no obstacles to their discussion. We want them to work together like they're in the same organization. So we will schedule and host sort of Zoom calls for those meetings. We'll provide a file sharing platform where the working group can share files and develop new documents. Obviously, those will probably be restricted to the members of the particular working group. However, when materials are developed that may be a resource for all of the clinicians in the network, or may benefit from sort of beta testing, as they say in the software industry, we envision documents moving to an intranet. So the hundreds of faculty and staff at the 31 sites will all have a chance to get a password access to an intranet, where materials that may not be ready to be shared publicly yet can be beta tested, tried out, commented on by the network members. And then the third bucket will be an outwardly facing internet. There's a few pages up now, for example, listing the sites, but we'll ultimately have resources for the community there, including such things as treatment guidelines that are either already available and we can link to, or that may be newly developed, if that goes some way to addressing your question.
Yes, absolutely. Fascinating program, and I'm not surprised to see this coming from NORD. So thank you for that. I don't see any questions. I have another one. Eliza, with the new program that you shared on the webinar today, is this the same program as your original registry program with NORD? And if it's not, and someone has an interest, if there's a patient leader of an organization that's on the call today and they don't currently have a registry, or they had interest in learning more about the NORD registry, is there a link that you can provide if it's not already? I saw the link to the new program.
Sure. So the IMR program is our standard registry program that we've had in existence till 2014. We are actually currently about to launch sort of a new iteration of the program, but it is still ultimately the same core program, just sort of some enhanced IT features and functions. If somebody is interested, email research@rarediseases.org, and we can learn more about what their needs are, talk to them more details about the program, and take it from there.
Awesome, thank you. Don't be shy about asking questions, everyone. They're gonna get tired of hearing from me, I think. Debbie, you spoke a little bit about the NORD conference that happens every October, which I can speak from experience is an amazing conference to attend, to learn in multiple different areas. And then when we're able to get back in person, I'm not sure if that's on the radar for this year. It's a fantastic conference to go to and network. Can you speak a little more to the conference, and is there a theme for this year? Anything that you want to share about that?
Yeah, sure. So the conference is the biggest, most comprehensive gathering of leaders in research and drug development. We have in the past had interim commissioners of FDA. I mean, it took so long for us to get this new commissioner confirmed, or it took so long for this country. I mean, we just got confirmed like a couple days ago, but in the meantime, we had the interim FDA commissioner speak at our conference. We have other key leaders in FDA and NIH and CDC speak at our event. We had a panel that was full of different division directors, CBER, CDER, CDRH, speaking about drug development and patient engagement specifically. So it's really a who's who for drug development and cutting edge innovation for rare diseases. It's a wonderful event. Our member organizations get one complimentary registration. And, you know, if it's in person, and I'm crossing my fingers because it seems like we're moving in that direction in this country, that if it's in person, we want to gather all of our advocates together, and we know that it's expensive and it's a burden. So we will have scholarships available to help with flights and accommodations, as well as the registration. And then there'll be a meeting before the entire summit where all of the leaders of patient advocacy groups can come together and meet with breakouts, small working group discussions, as well as didactic talks from leaders in rare disease research and drug development. That's if it's in person. If it's not in person, you know, it'll all be in a sort of Zoom format virtually, but we will still have working groups and conversations for not only research and drug development, but even capacity building. Like we have a workshop on collaboration, a workshop on fundraising. So it really is to help support our member organizations, as well as researchers and clinicians involved in drug development. I see Ed is unmuted.
Oh, I was just going to say, Debbie, after that excellent description you just gave of the NORD Orphan Product Breakthrough Summit coming up in October, maybe you'd also like to give a summary of the event that's coming sooner, the Living Rare, Living Stronger Forum.
Yeah, so NORD's Living Rare, Living Stronger is a patient-focused event that has workshops and activities for ways to live your best life. It's taking place in Cleveland over the summer. I'm going to go find the link and put it in the chat, but it's for you and individuals in your community. If you have people living in the Midwest, we'd love to, it really just bring the regional community together in one place as a celebration and as an opportunity to equip individuals living with rare diseases to live their best life. So that's, not just how to, get the best treatments and get involved in research, but also psychologically and emotionally, how to navigate relationships, how to navigate work and school. So the Living Rare, Living Stronger Forum is really good. It's not really about the whole science and drug development. It's really sort of a patient-focused conference. But I'll put the link to both in the chat. And if you subscribe to the emails, which we don't really push a lot of emails until we get closer to the event, if you subscribe, you'll be the first to know when the agenda is released. You'll be the first to know if it's in person, where it will be. So all that information is leaked first and foremost to those who subscribe to those lists. So it's a great mention, Ed, of the Living Rare, Living Stronger forum event.
Thank you both. I see a question that we have in the chat, and this is for Eliza regarding the new program that you shared. What is the value of aggregating data from multiple rare diseases?
So I think, oh, good question. Thanks. I think as many different diseases there are, there's likely commonalities across diseases, and there's likely both from a clinical perspective, but also from a quality of life, from a health utilization. And so being able to think about these diseases on a broader sense helps both to better understand the science and the lived experience, but also then as we sort of think of starting to talk about evidence-based advocacy and policy, how do we pull together everything we've learned from these different diseases to really start being able to advocate for the rare disease community more broadly about these things that impact everyone?
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone else have a question? We have just a couple more minutes. I mean, we've covered incredible material in an hour and we're done on time. That's amazing. With a minor glitch in the middle. I think with that, we will go ahead and close. Oh, I see one more. Let's see. Does a patient group's registry need to be in I Am Rare to participate in the new program?
Nope, it's open to anyone. All data is welcome. All people are welcome.
Absolutely. And then if you all are on the call today and you think of something later, we can get those questions to the NORD team, or if you feel like you missed one of the links, anything like that, you just please let us know with the CPAG or anyone in the RDCRN, and we will get you connected. To our NORD team, you guys are fantastic. We really appreciate you. And everyone just kind of handled our little glitch with grace. Fantastic information and webinar. So thank you all. And to everyone else, we will continue this webinar series with another speaker in March. Up next would be Sharon Terry with Genetic Alliance. So we look forward to sharing more information about that. And thank you all.